This is your one and only FireSpark81 with your daily dose of video goodness, and welcome back to another informational Valheim video. So the devs recently released a little fireside chat where they talked about Hearth and Home, and today we're going to talk about it. Let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is quickly go over all the Hearth and Home spoilers that I was able to pull out of this video. Then we're going to listen to a few quotes from the developers, and we're going to talk about it a little bit and unpack it a bit, because I feel like some of the things that they said can be taken out of context and are just going to cause people to have raging fits, and I feel like it's a good thing to talk about it. Okay, so let's start with the spoilers. So they mentioned that there's going to be a new map functionality. This could entail a lot of different things, everything from like waypoints to just a bunch of different things. New map functionality, that's awesome. More settings, so go into your options menu, that's what they're talking about there. Different settings there. Can't wait to see what all that entails. Graphics optimizations, always a fantastic thing to have. New locations to the plains biome. So when they say that, they're talking, so a location in this game are things like the goblin camps that would be considered a location. So we're gonna have new locations in the plains biome. They talked a little bit about how they changed some of the weapons, specifically the knives have changed. They felt that they were kind of useless before, and now they are one of the fastest weapons in the game. They do less damage, but they're super fast, so that means there's a chance that they could have higher DPS than all of the other weapons out there. We won't know until we're actually able to do some testing. Then they talked about how swords and axes felt kind of the same, and they wanted to separate those a little more. So now your single-handed axes are just a little bit slower, but do just a little bit more damage, and the swords are just a little bit faster and do just a little bit less damage. So I feel like we're going to see a ton of these like little tweaks here and there just to kind of drive home the emphasis of different things so that everything doesn't feel like just one big homogeneous blob. So they showed a couple of clips here and there throughout the fireside chat, and one of them that I noticed is when they're fighting the wolves in this clip here. Look at the knockback when this wolf bites. Like, it hits and goes flying back pretty far. So I'm wondering if this serpent shield is now considered a tower shield, and that's part of what they mentioned in previous spoiler videos where they said that the tower shields are going to have more of a knockback. That could be really strong, especially if you're with a group. If you have someone that is running the tank with the tower shield and someone behind them with a bow, and they're just blocking and taking the hits and knocking the target back, and then the other person is shooting them with a bow. There's so much going through my head right now with what the little bit of changes that we've seen to combat so far. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic changes. Then in this next clip, I thought it was interesting because now when you eat food, it apparently pops up and shows you how much you're getting to health and stamina for the food that you eat. Now, this is just a little quality of life little thing. Like, things like this make a big difference and you don't really realize it. Sure, you can just highlight over the food. You can just highlight over the food and know how much it's going to give you and do the math in your head. But these little pop-ups like this, just to give you the info right then and there in your face without you having to highlight over the food, it's just nice. It's just nice little quality of life tweaks. Next, they showed the recipes for a bunch of different things. So we can see the recipe for the spice rack. Then they showed the recipe for the butcher table. And finally, the recipe for the pots and pans. So it looks like the butcher table is not going to be acquired until you have silver. So you're going to be pretty far in the game before you can get that upgrade. And it looks like the pots and pans are not going to be craftable until you have black metal. So that's going to be for end game, well, current end game recipes. And the spice rack, you're going to need a turnip for it. So you're going to need to at least be at the stage of the swamp before you're going to get that upgrade. In this screenshot here, you can see that they changed the HUD display for the stagger meter. So before, it looked like this. It was just that tiny little thin bar, and now it's got the little shield icon under it. It's thicker. It's easier to see. I like the new one. I like the way it looks. It's much easier to see than the old one. That was one complaint that I already had with the first iteration of it that we saw, is that the stagger bar was kind of hard to see. Then moving on, we finally get to see 100% proof that we are getting the 45-degree, well, it says it's labeled the wood wall 45-degree inverted. We are finally, we know for 100, I mean, we were pretty sure before, but now, like, it's right there. It's going to cost 2 wood, and it's an inverted 45-degree wall. Rejoice, everyone. Can't wait to see what people do with this. So now let's listen to some stuff that the developer said, and let's talk about it. Now, this first clip that we're going to listen to, I've chopped some stuff out of it, but the context remains the same. So just keep that in mind, because if you watch the video and then after watching this, you might be like, well, Firespark, you chopped that up a little bit. I did, but I ensured that the context stayed the same because context matters.
Also, can I just say that this is not an MMORPG where we actually need to retain players? Like this game is just, spoiler alert, this game will eventually have an ending.
Yeah, because I've also seen people say, oh, when you've finished the game, there's nothing more to do.
Yeah, exactly. Then you go play another game.
That is how it works.
That is correct. That's how we made games back in the day.
Yes.
Before gaming as a service became the standard.
I mean, we don't want you to sit and play Valheim and sit and wait for stuff. Obviously, if we could like make the complete Valheim experience in a week and give you everything, we would do that. It's not like we're trying to torture anyone, but we need to at least walk the pathway and see what's best. And that takes time.
Oh my God, they don't care if you play their game. They don't even give a crap. They've already made so much money. They're just going to run off with it and they just don't care anymore. No, that is not the case here. That is 100% not the case. But I can see a lot of people already scream that, and I can see them hearing this in that video and then just going to absolute town with it, screaming it even more, when that is 100% not the case. Let me give you a bit of a hot take here, and I know some people are going to be like, what are you talking about, Firespark? That's just crazy talk. That's just nonsense. Not all games have to be open-ended and infinitely replayable. I know it's crazy to think about that you could just play through a game and then maybe play through it one more time and then call it good and throw it up on the shelf. Maybe you go back to it in a couple of years to relive it, or maybe you just don't. Maybe it just sits there and collects dust, and that's okay. It's okay to pay a monetary sum for an experience that ends. You do it all the time. You do it when you go to theme parks. You do it when you go out to eat. You do it just all the time. When you rent a movie, when you go to the movie theater, you are paying for an experience that you know is going to end. And that is okay. And something else that they say in this that I've been telling people for freaking months now who are like, I'm so bored with Valheim. Yeah, okay, great. Go play another game. There's other games there. Valheim's going to be here when the content comes out. It's perfectly fine to jump back into Hearth and Home when the patch drops, check it out, and then shelf it and go play something else. There are a lot of great games out right now. Valheim will be there when you decide to go back to it. It's fine to go play something else. You don't have to keep playing Valheim. I haven't. I don't know how many of you have noticed. I know some have, that I've kind of dipped off on making my Unarmed series. Like, I just haven't felt like playing the game, so I haven't. I've been enjoying a lot of other really great games that are out right now. And if you're so obsessed with a game that you feel angry and animosity towards the developers for not giving you content for said game faster so that you can continue to enjoy it because for some reason you can't put it down, then you probably should take a look at your relationship with video games.
How we want to work is like how we worked back in before early access, where we're just pushing stuff out. And I know a lot of people will say, like, how come you're not doing that with the Hearth and Home? Well, that's a good question, and I think it's better to just do the Hearth and Home content like we did right now, and just go over to working a little bit more like, okay, so we made this enemy, we did this dungeon, and we just pushed that out on a Friday.
Yeah.
So you guys get to play that. In between, we're working on Mistlands at the same time.
We don't actually like, holding stuff too long. It's difficult to release such a huge patch. There's so much stuff that can go wrong.
This sounds like to me that they had an idea of how early access should go, and like they needed to follow in the footsteps of other early access games because this is their first game that they're releasing and they weren't sure how to go about it. So they felt they needed to do this roadmap and all of this other stuff. And it looks like they've realized that they don't have to do that. They can just release small content whenever they want, and they can continue to develop their game the way they want and do it how they've always been doing it. And I think that's great. I think going through the path of making small changes here and there more frequently and constantly getting that community feedback as you do those things is an absolutely fantastic way to develop an early access game. Now, of course, there's going to be large content patches that happen in the middle of those smaller updates. That's pretty much a given, and that's something that they mention in this video. It would be silly to add one new thing to the Mistlands, for example, and then that's it. Like, oh, here's your new Mistlands spider or what elf or whatever, and that's the only thing over there. Well, you're not going to care. You're going to go over there, kill like 2, and then be like, that's great. There's no boss. There's no nothing else. So when you're doing things like that, where it's a set group of content, of course, you're going to release that in a larger patch. But if you're just adding a new enemy to, for example, the plains biome, well, then just toss it in there. That just makes sense. And it makes a lot of sense for early access development.
I really hope people will, instead of just continue playing with their own worlds, actually create a new world and start from the beginning, because we added and changed so much. So to get the best experience, that's probably what you should do. And what we would recommend. So I know a lot of people want to continue playing in their own old worlds, but that's probably not the best thing to do if you want to have, experience all the new stuff.
Oh yeah. I would say don't spoil yourselves by going into your old worlds and checking out all the build pieces and all the things that you get. I'd say play fresh.
I know that quote is going to upset a lot of people, and just the thought of putting aside all of those hours and hours and hours of game time that you have in your current world is for sure going to trigger and upset some people. But I want you to keep in mind that even if you start fresh, you don't have to lose your current playthrough or your current world. All of that time that you have will still be there in your save file, and I'm actually going to make a video to show you how to back up that save file so that you don't risk losing it at some point. And we're going to talk more about how that could happen here in a minute. But starting fresh not only allows you to view their current vision for the game, it also allows you to see how that vision of theirs plays out and allows you to give them proper feedback. It's kind of hard to give feedback, for example, of how the early game goes and how it feels if you're just jumping in with an end game character. And this is important. This is important not only for you to see how the game plays out now, but also for them. That feedback is important for them. They talk about balancing a lot in this video, and it's hard for them to get balancing right if they don't have a lot of community feedback, and that feedback is from people exploring the game fresh with a new save. And something else that I think a lot of people have forgotten or didn't bother to even think about in the first place when they bought this game, it's an early access game. It's not done. It's not complete. You're playing an unfinished game. Next time you load it up and you jump into Valheim, just think that to yourself. Just take a moment and think, I'm playing an unfinished product, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the game and they forget that fact. On top of that, starting a new save file is going to also ensure that you see all of the new stuff, because there's a chance that you may not see some of the new stuff if you don't start a new save, and that's because of how their map generation works. Apparently, stuff spawns in around you as you move around the map in about a 500-ish, so I don't remember if they said kilometers or meters or whatever around you. So a large area around you spawns in and is generated as you move around the map. If you are playing your old save and there is a chunk of, let's say, plains biome that has not been generated yet, that you have not been to yet, then you go to it it will then generate and spawn, for example, one of the new structures, or could spawn one of the new, or that new structure that they have added to the plains biome in Hearth and Home. The issue that you run into here, and this is not guaranteed, this is just advice from someone who has played a lot of early access games and a lot of games in general, and has a pretty decent grasp on how coding works. The issue that you could run into is that you're mixing old and new code, and this could cause corrupted data. So you have your current version, your current map, and you're playing through it. Then you download the Hearth and Home update and you want to see that new plains location. So you head over to a chunk of plains that you haven't been to yet and you start to load it in. Oh, and look, now it spawns that new location. Now, what could happen here is you have a whole bunch of code in your save file that's from before Hearth and Home, and now you have code in your save file that is from Hearth and Home when it comes to map generation. That could be fine. You could not have any problems whatsoever, but it could also cause corrupted data to end up forming, which could result in you losing your save file. So like I said, I'm going to show you how to back up your save files in a different video, so keep an eye out for that. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. Make sure you do those things so you can be notified when I put that video out. That way, if you do want to attempt to do that with your current save file, you have a backup of it and you don't risk losing all of that hard work. And if you're watching this video after the Hearth and Home update has already been released, then that video about backing up your save file is probably already out and you can check that out. You'll find it in the Valheim Guides playlist. All right, I think I've rambled on long enough. We're going to wrap it up there. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider hitting the subscribe button, notification bell, all that good stuff. I want to give an absolutely massive shout out and thank you to my supporters on Patreon for making this episode possible. Y'all are absolutely amazing people. If you'd like to join my Elite Crew Patreon supporters, please check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and show your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.